Josh and Frankie. What a couple of dumb shits.
Hello, primates! You found PRimus tracks. Congratulations! There are so many places to find us, but this is probably the best because you get to hear this voice right here. I am Josh. He is coming to you from the 39th floor of PRimus Tracks Towers. He's not the company man, he's the company. It's Frankie Berestein.
Hi, Josh.
I'm sure the view from the 39th floor in Mexico City this spring is gorgeous.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Hey, did you happen to see a guy in an orange shirt approaching the building?
I did.
Okay. Did you dispatch security?
I did.
Okay. Oh, I have bad news. He evaded them, and he's reached the ground floor studio that you keep for emergencies. And I'm really glad that he's here. We had a couple scheduling snafus for past episodes, and so he couldn't be here for a while, but I'm so glad that he's back. I suppose he's anything but a company man. It's Gene Meyer. Welcome back to PRimus Tracks.
Hey, what's up? Glad to be here.
Oh, dude, I'm so happy that you're back. For those of you who don't know Gene, he was on, I believe, our On the Tweak Again episode way back for Tales from the Punch Bowl, which tells you how long I've waited with bated breath for Gene to return. So, Gene, it's been a while. But you are a man of many talents. What in the world have you been up to lately?
Well, my band, Bandit, grindcore band, just got done a tour with Wormrot.
All right.
Been down the East Coast. And for the Orlando show, I wore my PRimus anti-pop shirt.
Yes.
Which I ordered off of eBay, and I got at least 5 compliments on it. So that was the highlight of the tour for me.
I have seen photos and video of you performing with Bandit in the anti-pop shirt, and it tickles me every time.
It's my most prized possession. It absolutely.
So it was not a chastity belt as it has happened to some of us.
Let me say this: none of the people who gave me compliments were women.
Oh, okay, that puts it into perspective. I was about to consider a career change.
Yeah.
But it's always great when you do that, because I just think, I know you're a huge PRimus fan, of course, but it just seems ironic to wear that when you're performing with your grindcore band. But to get compliments is a big deal.
Yeah. I also had a Ween shirt that I wore during the Atlanta show. I like to, because you don't associate Ween with grindcore necessarily. Sure. And I like that element of surprise,
Yeah. You're also showing people that there's more to life. And I don't want to pigeonhole anybody, because PRimus fans you could do the same thing with. But when I think of grindcore fans, I think, how much do they actually branch out? And maybe that's stereotyping, but you're giving them an opportunity.
Exactly. I'm opening a dialogue. As people would say.
You are so diplomatic about it, of course, when you're writhing around on the floor and running into your own fans for instrumental breaks.
Yes.
So exactly. Actually, I wanted to ask, because you do go all out on stage. I might have asked you this last time you were on. How long does it take to recover after a run of shows?
Oh, after a run of shows?
Yeah.
Oh, at least a week.
Yeah.
Just sitting in my apartment, folding laundry, watching The Sopranos. Just, that's my form of self-care.
So you're in the throes of that right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I only got out of bed to do this. So,
oh, I'm honored. You could have done it in bed.
That's a little tacky.
Fair. You're a professional after all. And how's the stand-up going?
It's going. No, it's good. I'm actually down here in Orlando. I have a show. I have 2 shows this weekend. It's going pretty well. It's 2 different monsters, music and comedy. Yeah. They have some similarities, but some major differences. But it's going pretty well.
Nice. Nice, man. Yeah. It's great that you can do both and be a therapist on top of it.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. Frankie, if you had your choice, would you be a vocalist for a grindcore band, a stand-up, or a therapist?
Wow, that's a tough
I
one.
know. And you're not
Um,
Gene, so you can't do all three.
I would like to be a therapist because all I would have to do is say, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
That'll be $200,
Of
please.
course.
Yeah,
Yes. Yep.
that's it. That's it.
I do appreciate that though. In all three of those phases of your life, Gene, you are helping people in some way through their own shit.
Yes, they're all kind of connected.
Yeah. I got to say, I'm really excited to have you back because in the interim, since you were last here, I have sent you a lot of Dream Theater jokes, and you have
Yes,
certainly
yeah, yeah.
created your own as well. And so we bond in that way.
Well, actually, what was funny, I don't know if you remember, but so we did On the Tweak again,
Uh huh.
and then the next episode was Over the Electric Grapevine. Les Claypool
You,
himself showed up on the Zoom
you
call.
just missed it, man.
I was like, damn, man, if I just waited a week, bro. But
Oh man.
but I also was like, what would I have said to him? I
Of
would have
course.
you know that scene in Wayne's World when he's like, "We're not worth." I would have just done that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not to compare myself to him, but as you know, after a Bandit show, everyone wants to, oh, and you
Yeah.
become like really wary of like punishers, is what we call them,
Oh, what's
which are
that?
it's like someone who like punishes you with conversation that you can't get out of.
Okay.
And you're just like, okay, cool. Thank you for buying the shirt. Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
Goodbye. I need to go to the bathroom. Goodbye.
Yeah, right. They just start info dumping you or spewing about their life story or what have you.
Yeah, I saw you at this show 7 years ago with this band and and you're like, okay, great. Thanks.
That is not a term I've used for the people that corner you like that, but I like it. Gosh.
Definitely start using it.
I mean, it doesn't happen to me. I'm a fucking podcaster, but in case I do get cornered by somebody who's like,
Oh, you will. Now that we've talked about it, you will.
Frankie, we're talking about Vernon the Company Man today, but before we can delve into his life, I believe you have miscellaneous debris.
Sesanta 2.0 or 61-ish or
The hell are they calling it?
Sesanta Reloaded. Yeah, it kicks off today at Palm Springs, I believe, right?
The day in which we were recording this, April 24th, 2025, Sesanta is relaunching. And if they do it again next year, will it be Sesanta Revolutions? Is that the
Sesanta
third?
Revolutions. Yeah.
Okay, to complete the trilogy. Great. Yeah.
And we have posters again and signed records again, but no new music itself. At least for now, we gotta wait for the show to actually take place. But that makes me wonder if we're getting those new PRimus songs for the summer tour.
Gergoo and John Hoffman each recorded a new song with Les and Lur as part of the final audition for PRimus.
Yeah.
We have heard zero of that material, and I don't know if we will anytime soon. I was hoping it would be today, but instead they published the lost audition with Michael Plopnik. And if you haven't gone to the PRimus YouTube channel to see the lost audition, do yourself a favor.
Was that Fred Armisen
Yes.
that I saw?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, what the hell?
Fred played at least 5 different characters throughout that series. So he was Plopnik, he was Richard Ed Nonnell, which is a long backwards. He was Don the drum guy. He posed with Les and or Larry as Jens Hanneman too, which is one of his drummer characters. So Fred was just hanging out being silly,
That's awesome.
as Fred is wont to do. And as you mentioned, Frankie, it's the same EPPP that they
It's
are
the EPPP.
repackaging. If you go to a Sesanta show and you pick up an extra EPPP, send it to Frankie.
Yes, please.
Gene, Sesanta plans?
Well, my friend just informed me that they're playing Tampa in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, my cousin's getting married on May 9th. And I'm like,
Ditch the wedding.
priorities. Yeah. It's the wedding.
Frankie has taken to giving wild advice to people on this podcast the last few
Yeah.
weeks. I'm not sure where this is coming from, but he's just like, take it to the extreme.
Yeah. But I think they're actually playing Philly on May 15th, so at the Man. So I'll just go to that instead.
There's your stomping grounds. And hopefully you can catch the headliner tour afterwards with Hoffer in the seat there.
Okay. Nice.
All right. Thank you for that, Frankie. Not for the bad advice, but the miscellaneous debris, of course. Well, today we are talking about Vernon the Company Man. That is track 5 on your Les Claypool disc of Wales and Woe. It checks in at 2 minutes and 32 seconds. Credits are as follows. Les Claypool, bass and vocals. Mike Dillon, tabla. Gabby Lala, sitar. This one is quite a departure from what we've already covered on the album and will certainly stand out for the rest of it, I imagine. Frankie, what do you got on this one?
Vernon the Company Man was premiered on June 2nd, 2006, and it remained on heavy rotation with the Fancy Band throughout 2006, 2007, and 2008. Oddly enough, it was performed only once by the Fungi Band at Terminal 5 in New York on March 28, 2009. That's the last performance of Vernon the Company Man to date. And what is very interesting about these live performances is that on the record, you don't have drums on this track. I think you have percussion, but there are no drums per se. But for the live performances, they created this coda for the song where all the band kicks in, and it's really fabulous. I think it takes the song to another level, and we're going to sample that in the live cuts today.
Gene, we're here to talk about Vernon, but I do want to ask you straight away here, what's your relationship with this here record of Wales and Woe?
It's interesting. So I was the first in my friend group to discover PRimus. It took a while for it to catch on with other friends. I remember being in 8th grade when Animals Should Not Be People came out.
Okay.
And I had my mom keep me home from school that day, literally to buy the album. And so that was 2003. So this was 3 years later. I was a junior in high school. And this was like the first Les Claypool album that came out that like we were all hyped for.
Oh, all right.
It was like, and I think if I remember correctly, it came out around this time of year, like the spring, like May or June.
I think so.
Yeah. Because I remember like getting out of school on a Friday and like going to FYE, which saying that out loud makes me feel really old. But and like and they had released One Better as like the lead-in single and everyone really loved it. And then, you know, with the album release was the tour, and it was one of the few times growing up that like an album came out that I felt like me and my friend group were all mutually excited for. So it definitely has a very special place.
Nice. When you started that story with you were the first to get into PRimus in your friend group, I thought it was going to end that you no longer had that friend group.
Yeah.
So I'm happy it went in a different direction. I think that's really rad. So you all had this album to look forward to and all got to binge it together.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an awesome album. I mean, absolutely. And it's got some bangers on it, to say the least. And I think this album, along with Purple Onion, are probably my favorite. Well, although I really like the Sausage album, that one's really incredible. But this, like, of his solo stuff is probably top 2, I would say.
Nice. Yeah. Have you found that when you start speaking in superlatives in this vein, you think, oh wait, no, not that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that one. No. And then you have to start making exceptions. Yeah.
It's funny, at the show where I wore the anti-pop shirt, this guy said, "What's your favorite PRimus song?"
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was like I couldn't. It's so, because they're like your kids, like your family. You just love them in their own separate way, you know.
You bet.
Most of them.
It's a hard question to answer, for sure. And then, so we're talking about Vernon. Is there something that draws you to this track specifically?
I always really liked the lyrics, which is weird because, like, and I know this is ironic because I am the lyricist in my band, but I'm not normally a big lyrics guy.
As far as listening to them when you are spinning some tunes?
Yeah, I mean, most of the music I listen to, you can't even tell what they're saying. And I don't even bother to look it up. I'm just like, if I
Yeah.
like the guitar, if I like the instruments or the voice, then I'll. But here, like, there's something really poetic and haunting, and I think the music really matches the vibe of it.
Yeah, I'm down with that. I've got a connection. It's kind of an ironic connection between music and lyrics to me, but there is a connection nonetheless, which is when I first heard this tune in 2006, I was only a couple of years removed from college, and I was still, reading a lot of the literature and stuff that I read in college because I got heavy into all kinds of stuff. And so I had read some Ginsberg and I'd read some Kerouac, who are two of the big three, I suppose, of the beat movement. William Burroughs would probably be the other recognizable name. So I'd read a lot of their stuff and I was kind of, had rudimentary knowledge of it. And I heard this song and I went, oh, this is really ironic because we have a song, we have music that you could stereotype as very beatnik and
Yes.
being, delivering some kind of poetry over or some kind of text, but the lyrics are about the most straight-laced conformist guy you could think of. And so there's some irony at play here, or just Les is playing in contrasts. That's where I made a connection between music and lyrics, and I think it works really well.
Now that you bring that up, the lyrics kind of remind me of, did you ever read Death of a Salesman?
Oh, years ago. Absolutely. Arthur Miller, yeah.
And that sort of like quiet desperation
Yes.
of, which came out at around the same time, I would say.
Yeah, gosh, Frankie, will you look up Death of a Salesman? I think it was 1954.
And it was also referenced by Claypool and Delirium several years down the line.
With Breath of a Salesman?
Yes. And there's a Tales from the Crypt episode called Death of Some Salesman, where Tim Curry plays three characters at the same time, and one of the characters is called Winona.
We're finding
Look at
connections
that.
everywhere.
Look at that.
Tales from the Crypt, huh?
Death of a Salesman is a 1949 stage play written by Arthur Miller.
5 years
It
off.
premiered on Broadway in February 1949, running for 742 performances.
It was a bona fide hit. And I think it was that those themes of quiet desperation, among other things, that really resonated with people. And I would see a connection here, not necessarily in the first stanza with his, describing his appearance, but certainly that last stanza. He had an ex-wife, an ex-kid, an ex-dog, an ex-house, and the Marlboro Man dug him in an early grave. Very, I'd say that's emblematic of that quiet desperation is embodied in that play. That's a really interesting connection, and that's a play I need to go back and read again because it's so good.
It is good. Not everything I read in college I liked, but I did like that.
Yeah. So, I don't know if we can classify plays as bangers, but I would put
was a
put
banger.
Salesman in that category. Chekhov's bangers. That's what they like. If you want to get more people into the theater, you need to have play collections, those bound collections. Just call them Shakespeare's bangers. Chekhov's
Greatest hit.
killer plays. Let's start with the lyrics, actually, because that is, I think, the strength of the tune, and that's where my attention went to, Gene, which is he's painting this portrait of Vernon the Company Man. Of course, a company man, he's a guy that will do something. He'll go above and beyond for the company. He'll go beyond his own personal interests for the company. We know how well that ends.
Yeah.
So we already know this guy's a tragic figure because he's put his faith in the company, and I'm sure the company cares a whole lot for him. But we're describing his appearance. His sideburns are shaved. He likes his ham and Swiss. He has a beer on Saturdays. So he's really clean cut. He's very much into his company and performing well for them. He's eating the most ho-hum sandwich you can imagine, and he's saving his beer for Saturday.
We've discussed the bicep, the scrotum, the tongue. What is Vernon?
So what? Oh, right, because we've been talking about the anatomy of the record, because Les described one better as the bicep, and then the Les Stings was the crotch, and then we decided that Of Whales and Woe was the tongue of the record.
Okay.
I'm curious what Vernon would be as far as the anatomy of the record.
Something like I don't know why, but like the lung.
The
Yeah.
lungs? Ooh.
Especially because it also it mentions the Marlboro Man later on in the song. The lungs are very sensitive. They're sort of like the company man of the body. I don't know.
I'll buy it. I'd call this the lungs of the record because you do get a chance also after Of Whales and Woe, which is a pretty chaotic tune, and then Phantom Patriot following this, which is a pretty driving tune. This tune, Vernon, gives you a chance to slow down and take a breath. The lungs of the record, Frankie.
Great.
You, Gene Meyer, being what I would probably call the antithesis of a company man, what are you finding in these lyrics that resonates with you? Or do you find yourself just reading these lyrics and being repulsed by Vernon?
Oh no, absolutely not. If
Okay.
anything, I feel empathy for him. It's like you pointed out earlier that he's just so dedicated to, it I think genius, and I use that word lightly here, is that he's a company man. That's how he's defined, but we never find out what he does because
Right.
that's irrelevant,
Yeah.
right? But like it really is very similar to Death of a Salesman in that he's sort of dedicates his life to his calling, his whatever, his job. And ultimately, it doesn't lead anywhere. It leads to a tragic ending. And like a lot of Claypool's tunes have, I'm sure you've discussed this, they have like, they're critical of capitalism, to say the least.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this is very, subtly critical of, the millions of people out there who dedicate their lives to some company, to some job, to some field, and it doesn't pay them back. Or
Yes, they
leave.
get caught up in the machine, I suppose.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I certainly see that here. And as you stated, it doesn't lead to anything because he loses his wife, his kid, the dog, the house. He finds a widow, but
Yeah.
pretty soon he kicks the bucket. And so, like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, especially if it's the Marlboro Man, I'm thinking this guy dies of lung cancer at age 52, unfulfilled. He probably worked for this company for 25 years, and what'd he get? A watch?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, man. Come on, Vernon. I don't think that there's any judgment here either of Vernon. I think it's just Claypool laying out the story and we can judge for ourselves. But I think there's enough subtext that I think Vernon can be a sympathetic character because maybe he isn't aware of greater possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we know it takes a lot to step out of the mainstream. We know it takes a lot to take risks. And of course, Claypool has written a lot of lyrics about how he himself took risks, stepping out of the workaday world, trying to make it in music. I would say for somebody who does stand up and fronts a grindcore band and does therapy, I don't know that you are in the machine. So I think maybe you have a better perspective on this for somebody who isn't caught up in it, like Vernon.
Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of people who are unhappy with their jobs. It's funny, I was thinking about it before this session. There's this grindcore band called Tumor Feast, who I think 8 people know of them,
Nice.
right? Hyper obscure, but they had a sample on one of their songs, and it's this guy who says, if you work to make a living, why do you kill yourself working? I first heard that when I was like 16 before I had a job, but I was like, damn. You know,
Yeah.
my philosophy is that like work is to serve us. We are not to serve it. But like I said, we live in a capitalist authoritarian society, and a lot of people think it's, oh, I need to do this. And it really, like, the word here that I think comes from the song is like desperation. There's a desperation to keep up with the Joneses, or I need to feel
Mhm.
like I'm an adult, or to have this job is to have this identity, but it's you're relying on something external when it should really be coming internally, or even spiritually.
I don't know if it's still out there, but there did seem to be, because he's really painting this picture of this guy, and I can't help but envision him in just being a stereotypical 1950s guy going off to work in the factory, or doing drafting, or being an accountant or whatever. I think it's largely been that the bubble's largely been popped on the illusion that, if I work really hard for this company, I'll be recognized and climb the ladder and be wealthy, or at least be really well off. It's certainly not presented the same way it was back then, especially through the propagandist films that kids had to watch back then about, serving the greater good by working in a munitions plant. you know.
Now, musically, I think the song is very interesting because, in the context of the record, it serves a purpose. It's there to let the record breathe,
Mhm.
hence the longs between two very abrasive tracks. But
Yeah.
if you take Vernon out of that context, I guess it would be one of the strangest sounding songs in Les Claypool's catalog. Um, it's completely unlike the rest of his music. It's quite out of character, I think. It's really atmospheric.
Mhm.
There's upright bass, but it's not in your face as you would expect with Les. So it's musically, it's a really interesting track.
Yeah, he's even being with his vocal delivery. It's even different from most of his tracks because he has this breathy delivery. Vernon was a company man. He doing that thing.
Yeah.
I can't even think of another instance where he has that a similar vocal delivery. This music, I think, is on theme, and I think he was channeling some beat stuff because Mike Dillon studies tabla, and he's been playing for decades. And when we talked to Mike a long time ago, he talked about it being meditative for him and helping him focus, and he's studying it very closely. I think he mentioned at some point that he and Danny Carey have the same tabla instructor. And so so those guys, I don't know if they study together, but they certainly are pursuing a similar outcome with tablas and rhythm and that kind of thing. So I'm sure at some point in the recording of this, Claypool just said, "Hey, I got this track, bust out those tablas," and he did, and then he thought, it would be even better, or would really bring this song, is bringing in that sitar and having Gabby do something, really out there.
During the lines where he says, I can't remember which lines, but he actually like kind of harmonizes his voice with the bass a little bit. When he
Hmm.
like switches up the bass note, that is like, it's way more melodic than anything he normally does.
Oh yeah, I think that's the ex-wife, ex-kid,
Yeah,
ex-dog,
yeah,
ex-house part when he goes along, yeah, sings along with the bass line. He's certainly going off the beaten path, as you state, Frankie. But I use the word beaten path because I think is that he is making a play on the beat movement or the beat generation or just beat in general, because it does kind of have that finger snappy out there vibe to it. Of course, with the ironic inclusion of the Vernon in the lyrics.
Yeah,
If I was going to stereotype a beatnik, I'd probably think of somebody wearing a beret and a scarf and a black sweater or a black button down and black pants and black everything, and they're reading from their little notebook at the coffee house or whatever. This feels like another take on that to me. That he's not making fun of it or anything. I think he's just channeling that spirit for the music and then layering the lyrics over it for some irony. Are you a beat guy at all, Gene?
Well, all right. I don't want to disappoint you.
Oh no.
In college, at least my first attempt. I they made us read On the Road.
That's the
Yeah.
101 for the beat.
And maybe I was just too young at the time, but I was like, what is the point of this? You know? They like they get drunk, they drive the car, they sleep in a barn, then they like get drunk again. Like what the hell is the point of this?
Yeah. Well,
But
you're
it's
not.
kind of the point of it. That's what life
Yes.
is like.
Yes.
Very like,
So you were
direct.
finding it without even knowing that you were finding it, because they were talking about a new vision, that sort of thing. Kerouac and Ginsberg and Burroughs, when they were huddling together trying to give voice to this, they were trying to create this new vision, and it had to do with a lot of stream of consciousness and just trying to find something. There's a lot of human folly in that, but also giving into, or just allowing your urges to take you where they will, which could mean hitchhiking across the country, busting into a barn and sleeping in a hayloft, getting hammered every night.
Have you ever heard about On the Origins of the Beat Generation by Jack Kerouac?
Now that one I haven't read. I've read On the Road and Dharma Bums. It's been 20 odd years for each. And if anybody's interested in the beat movement or beat authors, Kerouac's a great start with those two. Allen Ginsberg's Howl is an immortal piece of beat. And Burroughs, of course, Junkie and Naked Lunch, melt your brains. Because I'm pretty sure he was on acid the entire time he wrote it.
Yeah.
Those three guys are my big three of beat. And so if you're interested at all, those three are a great place to start. There's a great quote from Ginsberg, because a lot of people talk about the beat generation and beat poetry and beat literature. And he says, Ginsberg said, there is not beat poetry or a beat novel or beat painting. Beat is a poetic conception and attitude toward the world. And I think you were starting to find it in On the Road there, Gene. And so it's just that idea of the new vision and just trying to find themselves or trying to find meaning in a different way. Certainly out of the mainstream, right? The workaday world. Because remember, these guys are doing this in the late 40s, and the World War II has just ended. And so that they saw that war machine, and I don't think they wanted any part of it. They're doing everything but being the clean-cut workaday world person, which is why they are doing a lot of drugs, drinking a lot, just slumming around, hanging out with poor people, hanging out with the homeless, hanging out with ne'er-do-wells, really doing the things that a normie, I guess, wouldn't do.
That Vernon wouldn't do.
Vernon would never do any of this. Vernon seems like the kind of guy that will walk down the street, see a panhandler, and just be like, bum, Just give him a little side glance and call him a bum and keep walking.
I'm glad that by this point in his collaborations, Les have recruited Gabby Lala as a member of the fancy band, because the sitar does really shine on this track. The sitar itself, I think, is a really fascinating instrument. If you've ever seen a sitar, it's this huge instrument which looks tremendously challenging to play, and apparently it is.
Yes.
The sitar requires a specific plucking and fretting techniques, including bending strings to create a distinctive sound, which can be painful and require practice and discipline to master. Not only that, but it is also a physically demanding instrument in terms of posture.
Yes.
So if you hear what Gabby's doing on the song, on this track, she's serving the track with her instrument.
Yeah.
But if you hear what she's doing during some of the jams or other tracks during the tour, it's really crazy what she was playing. I think it's really interesting how Les explored what he could do with that instrument during this portion of his career.
Yeah, and it sounds, of course, to our ears, sounds very exotic. And I think that's just a product of how it's presented to us. But the microtones that you really don't get in standard Western music is what sets it apart. And the other thing is that we should give lots of credit to Gabby for lugging around a sitar. You've spent time with her, Frankie. She is a small person.
She's tiny, yeah.
She's a small person, and to have that sitar, hanging over her shoulder and to play it on stage is really impressive. Because you do really have to wrap your arms around that thing.
You have to wrestle with it.
Yes, it is her rainbow bass. Yes, I actually wanted to play a bit of Gabby's showcase on Vernon because it, as you said, it serves. And it serves so well.
Vernon was a company man.
Yeah, that's the tail end of her showcase there. It's really eerie and atmospheric, and kind of takes you out there. Now, Gene, this seems like a far cry from what you perform.
Oh, well, our next album is full of sitar. So.
Oh, shit. I can't wait. I can't help to, but, and once again, this is just a product of the culture. I think I can't help but think of the LSD Beatles when I hear sitar, because that was probably where a lot of people first heard one. I think me included. But then you dig into somebody like...
You did LSD with the Beatles?
Oh, yeah. 1968. It was wild, man. I should have called you. I apologize. That would have been a good time. But then you dig into somebody like Ravi Shankar and his daughter Anushka, I think, and they are just incredible. And then it becomes something that's not exotic, but just another instrument that's full of possibilities. And I think that that's how it's treated in the Fancy Bandit by Gabby, too. And I think that's the best part of it.
Well, have you guys discussed it all? Because around this time, Gabby's solo album came out. I think it was called something Dream or something.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Careful what you wish for.
That's the one she recorded at Rancho with Les, yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, like people, my more macho friends were like, what the hell is this? Like, my name is Mud, right? But I really liked it. And it's not like, I think it was more she is a sitar player and he was like, hey, why don't you play sitar on this track? Rather than him being like sort of patronizing or being like overly conscious about the fact that he was putting it on the song.
Yeah, because she's a trained sitar player. So yeah, it wasn't just a lark. It was, bring that big thing in. I got an idea. Man, I want to hang out with those macho guys.
Yeah. No, you don't.
Altogether, the atmosphere here, the lyrics, it all runs really well together. I wanted to draw another parallel to something from the beat, and that is I wanted to draw a parallel to Howl. Probably been a while since you read it, Gene. Frankie, I don't know if you've ever read Howl.
No, I have not.
Howl is a legendary poem by Allen Ginsberg, probably emblematic of beat. In Howl, Ginsberg has some repetition, and of course there's the legendary opening line, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked. It's a long ass poem, but that first line a lot of people remember. The first word of many of the lines is who. So he's describing the best minds. Who bared their brains to heaven under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs illuminated. First of all, that's fucking poetry. Second of all, he's just identifying who they are with all these descriptors. Who cowered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets, listening to the terror through the wall. Who got busted in their public beards returning through Laredo with a belt of marijuana for New York. This dude's hip, too. But that repetition of who, Claypool in these lyrics for Vernon is saying he. He was a company man. He was a Brill Cream man. He liked his Swiss and ham. He drank a beer out of the can, and that sort of thing. So I see parallels there. Is that intentional? I'm going to say yes, because there's too much beat stuff going on in here for it not to be coincidental for me. I think he must have read or reread Howl or been hanging out at City Lights bookstore in San Francisco, because this is around the time that South of the Pump House came out, as we've noted prior to this, and he did do a book tour. and went to a lot of well-known bookstores, and there's no doubt in my mind that he read at City Lights or somewhere in the Bay.
Actually, on that book tour, which was '06, '07, I have a friend, shout out Garrett Thompson, who is a huge Les Claypool fan. And he went to one of the book signings and he called me on the phone and he said, "Here's Les Claypool." And he put up the phone to his face and he just says, "Hey." And then he hung up. And I was like, "What? I just talked to my idol." Yes.
On the phone.
He just said, "Hey."
Hey.
Like that, just like that. I was like,
That sounds like a not amused hey.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be pretty annoying to do. I mean, granted, we were both like 17 or whatever, but
Yeah.
hey, here, talk to my friend who's like, I don't know where he was or whatever.
Yeah.
It was great.
I mean, he probably gets enough of that crap, so it's not, he's not going to play around like, "Hey, Billy, I want pepperoni on my pizza,"
Yeah.
What did Les mean with Brill Cream Man?
Frankie, you're not a Brill Cream man?
What's that?
I assumed it was like, in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He has Dapper Dan.
Exactly, yes. Pomade? Yeah, it's hairstyle.
His face red like a topographical map. Does that mean that he had a pockmarked face?
That's my interpretation.
I never really looked into it that hard, but yeah, a topographical map is like, what is that?
Yeah, it
It's
shows
like
you elevation and landform. So you'll see those when they're printed. They're actually three-dimensional. Like some will be
Yeah.
three-dimensional. Yeah.
Okay.
So you see peaks and valleys and crags and canyons. And so this guy's got quite a marked up face, which would tell me, I'm guessing maybe then he worked pretty hard labor.
And what does it mean to play footsies?
Oh, Frankie.
bro.
Gene?
When you're like sitting next to a girl you like and you start tickling her foot with your foot and you're like, "Hey."
Oh, gee
You never done that, Frankie? You never done that? Yeah, dude. Playing footsie. Come on.
Yep, it's often the next step in flirtation. When you fancy somebody, footsie's kind of the next step after the verbal stuff.
Even though the timeline is kind of inverted on the lyrics, I'm assuming he got a divorce and lost his family because he had an affair, right?
It could have been in response to losing his family.
That's how I interpreted it more.
He picked up on a widow and had some fun, had some footsie.
Okay, so we have no context on why he lost his family, though.
It could be that he was a company man, that he was maybe he was working overtime and dedicating his life to the company and ignoring his family, which is never the case in this country.
Yeah. Never heard of that before.
No, that's a new one.
So it's the company man term. It's interesting because if we break down the lyrics like this, it does shed some new light on the song for me. So now it kind of reminds me of that post that makes a rundown of our lives, and it says something like, "You work 8 hours to eat lunch in 15 minutes, and you work all year to take a holiday for a week," things like that, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Work and then death.
Yeah, right. And of course, Beat is about being outside that mainstream, exploring possibilities, following your own desires and that sort of thing. I wanted to enlighten you even further, Gene.
I know. This is like freshman year of college, all in 45 minutes.
I do have one more quote from Ginsberg that I'll toss out there, and this was Allen Ginsberg describing Beat, and he says, "Everybody is lost in a dream world of their own making. That was the basis of the Beat generation. That was the primary perception. The idea of transience of phenomenon." There's more to it, but everybody is lost in a dream world of their own making. If that doesn't describe the social media age, I don't know what does.
Absolutely.
I think he had more positive thoughts around that idea. But so if Ginsberg were around now, I don't think he'd like it.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I got one more because I like this quote too.
Okay, all right.
He
Bring
said-
out all the quotes, baby.
There will be a quiz. I think you're going to do really well. I'm going to give you one of those little notebooks that you got for your written exams when you were an
Oh,
undergrad.
the little blue exam book?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
He went on to say there is a notion that the Beat generation was rebellious. I would say that the mainstream culture was rebellious against nature, and the Beat generation was much more obedient to human nature. I really glommed onto that quote because if the Beat guys are outside the mainstream and just kind of following their noses or urges, desires, or floating in the wind, he's saying that's more akin to human nature than the system that he stepped out of. Opinions are going to vary on that, but from his perspective, especially in the late 40s, what he had seen in the decade prior, I can understand his perspective.
There's this type of therapy called Gestalt, which came from some German guy named Gestalt.
Yeah.
But it had a similar sentiment that, he created in the 50s that human beings were not naturally inclined to sit in these air-conditioned cubicles, right? And a lot of our distress comes from the sort of unnaturalness of the world and the way society runs. And so one way of healing is to get back in touch with our nature and our spontaneity and stuff like that.
There's a lot of strands of that through sociology, psychology, what have you. Well, we've talked a lot about this tune. And those beautiful notes could only mean one thing. It's time for the Primates to talk about the tune as well. If you would like your take read on the episode, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Primus Tracks. There are many tiers of support over there, but the universal constant is, of course, Primates Takes. I post the thread, you post your thoughts, and I read them right here. For example, Eric in Australia succinctly says, once again, lyrical genius. Eric is another thoughtful guy, by the way. I love talking to him about literature. So when he says lyrical genius, he means it. Mickey Waters says, Les's early Tom Waits-esque spoken word jazzy cautionary tale with a particularly crazy psychedelic sitar solo by Gabby. I remember seeing this tour, and when he played this song, Paolo played some crazy ripping drums for the outro. Totally caught me off guard. Frankie! Mickey was one of the people to witness that. Ryan Rashawn. And Ryan Rashawn says, blue collar beat poetry, ? With Gabby as the featured player. Love the mellow percussion to go with it. No cymbals the entire track. Good point, Ryan.
Good point.
Which reminiscent of Mary the Ice Cube. Anthony Del Preet, go Bills, says Les's vocal approach here is pretty neato. The music is almost total background music to the narration, but it's the perfect accompaniment. I always felt like Vernon was the guy working in the factory on the inside photograph. The track definitely evokes some imagery. I believe, for those of you watching on video, these guys right here. One of them might be Vernon.
By the way, Anthony, The House, 1985. You know what I'm talking about.
I vaguely remember this reference, yes. John Shreve will wrap it up by saying, this one is like a preview of the next LP. Light, silly, creepy. I believe when he says next LP, he's referencing of Fungi and Foe. Thank you all, Primates, for those insightful takes. Gene, would you like to rebut any of those takes?
They're all wrong. It was on point. It was totally on point.
If you would like to respectfully disagree with Gene, you can find him at Gene Meyer, LOL, on most socials. Please direct complaints to him. The opinions of Gene Meyer are not the opinions of Primus Tracks. There we go. All right, we heard from the Primates, and now it's Frankie's favorite portion of the show. Live cuts from
A jam vehicle.
Live cuts from the jam vehicle. Live cuts from.
What's going on here?
Frankie, we have 2 live cuts today for Vernon the Company Man. Gene, do you think Vernon the Company Man would qualify as a jam vehicle?
Anything would qualify as a jam vehicle with these guys. I mean, come on.
That's true.
I mean, they could take the Robot Chicken song and extend it to 8 minutes, you know?
I'm buying it. Yeah, our first cut today of Vernon the Company Man, we're going back to the Roxy in Boston, 2006. This one is over 5 minutes, so they double the length of Vernon for this live performance. Frankie, you gave no indication as to what we are going to experience.
I think it must be the coda.
Come on, man. Oh, damn. Well, that gives the tune a totally different vibe.
Big time. Big
Wow.
time.
Really funky drum beat, too, and then Skerritt playing some sax over it. Yeah, it becomes a completely different tune. It's not as tragic. Now I want to dance. Not on Vernon's grave or anything, but I do want to dance. Wow.
It still has that bit of that beat vibe, though.
Yeah, because Les is sitting on those root notes. When they transitioned there a bit, he was just sitting on those root notes and kind of opened things up a little bit. But it certainly kept that beat vibe underneath with Gabby and Mike. That was unexpected and delightful.
Awesome, yeah.
Our second live cut is from the fictional Of Whales and Woe live sessions box set that Frankie is going to lobby that Les Claypool release in 2036 for the 30th anniversary of the album. So we don't have a date on this one. Frankie, do you have one for it off the top of your head?
No.
You do realize there's a subset of listeners who get really irritated when we don't give dates
That's right.
and locations
That's right.
for the shows. Okay. If you are irritated with Frankie that he did not provide that information, please send all complaints to @Gene Meyer, LOL, on most of the socials.
It's my fault.
Let's hear this mystery clip of good old Vernon. Damn, son.
Man, that's good.
I always loved Paulo's hi-hat work.
What drummer was that? Because you said
Paulo.
that.
That's Paulo, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
That was excellent.
for sure. Let's hear it for Paulo Baldi and Gene Meyer, everybody. Round of applause. Let's hear it for Frankie's live cuts, everybody. Wow. The crowd loves the live cuts. Well, I guess I could say this, Vernon. You don't need the Marlboro Man, Vernon. You've been tracked. Next time, Frankie, speaking of tracking, we have to track down the Phantom Patriot.
Creeping, ever creeping.
Great song.
Creepy. Gene Meyer, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Vernon the Company Man and the Beat Generation. I hope I did not give you traumatic flashbacks to your undergrad years.
It was, it was fine.
Good. Excellent.
I wish I had known. I would have read the Wikipedia article, or I don't know. I would have fallen asleep.
No, I distilled it for you. I hit you with the best quotes.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
this one's a special tune with the irony of the lyrics paired with the music. And so I think we're going to see that a few more times on this record. We kind of did that with Of Whales and Woe. I think there's a couple more we're going to note in that regard. So I mentioned it earlier in jest, but you really can find Gene at Gene Meyer LOL on most of the socials. I believe Instagram is where you're most active. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
Big
So there's grindcore, there's metal, there's comedy, there's dream theater jokes. Every once in a while, Gene posts a picture from his high school yearbook, and he is looking great.
Dude, that was back when this album came out. I did the fro and the tuxedo and everything.
Oh, so we can get the full picture of you putting the CD on with that haircut, with the tuxedo.
Off the frame, I'm putting Of Whales and Woe into my parents' 1993 Jeep Cherokee.
That's why your smile is so large and genuine. There's nothing better than that.
Oh, those were the days, man. Those were the days.
So I know you just got off the road with Bandit. Bandit plans coming soon?
We're playing a fest in Lebanon, Maine with this band Bonginator, who are awesome. They're like weed-themed metal. Okay, because we got a really cool show coming up in Philly, but I don't know if I can announce it yet.
So you'll just have to follow you to find out when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right on, man. And good luck with the stand-up. I know that's really difficult.
Yes. And I make it even harder.
Oh, man. Well, I'm so glad we got to connect with you again, and come on back. We'll do another one.
Absolutely. Man.
Excellent. Thanks,
Thank you, Gene.
Later days.
Willie Mays.